Did you know that eating apples as a fruit can protect you from diabetes? Well, in this video, we are going to look at some of the foods that you can take that will help you to prevent diabetes, and also if you already have diabetes, some of the foods that can be good for you. Hello, our dear viewers. You're welcome to our YouTube channel, Health Tips and Tricks, and I'm your physician, Dr. Andrew, to take you through. If you are new, kindly subscribe. And if you have not been with us, feel free to check out our site and look at our previous videos to learn more about your health. So today, as a follow-up, we are still looking at diabetes, and we are going to see what kind of foods can you eat to prevent diabetes, to help you prevent diabetes, the foods that are good for your health. Or if you already have diabetes, what are some of the foods that can be good for you? As we mentioned in our previous videos, we saw that diabetes is a disease which affects one of the organs in the body called the pancreas. It affects the pancreas's ability to produce insulin in order to balance your blood sugar or to normalize your blood sugar. So how is this pancreas affected? One, diabetes will make it not produce sufficient insulin, and when you don't have sufficient insulin, it means you cannot lower your blood glucose levels. So how does the food we eat affect the pancreas? So every time you eat food which is rich in glucose, your pancreas will have to produce insulin. It will have to work hard to produce insulin in order to balance that glucose. So if you take foods which are high in glucose, these foods will cause the pancreas to work harder. While if you take foods which are low in glucose, these foods your pancreas will not have to work so much. We can put it like that. But to explain more about this, we shall have to talk about something called glycemic index. Some of you have heard of something called glycemic index. So what is this thing called glycemic index? Glycemic index is like a percentage of by how much does a food you eat raise your blood sugar. For example, if you look at glucose, sugar is glucose, it is sugar. So if you eat it, it will raise your blood sugar by 100%. Okay? So different foods are gauged depending on by how much they will raise your sugar. And glucose is what we look at as sort of like a standard. So we shall look at other foods in comparison to glucose. So 100% meaning it will raise your sugar by a large amount. So it means the higher the glycemic index, the worse the food at raising your blood sugar, and that's the food you want to avoid. So you want to look at foods which have a low glycemic index. So foods which have a glycemic index of 50 and above, those are regarded as foods which have a high glycemic index. And if your glycemic is about 50, that's moderate. And below 50, those are the foods which we want to take. Those are the foods which we want to use to help us either prevent diabetes, or if we have diabetes, to help us have a healthy diet. So high glycemic index is not good for diabetes because it will cause your pancreas to overwork, and this can either make you progress to diabetes or make your diabetes control poor. So what are some of these foods? So we are going to look at foods which have a low glycemic index. In other words, foods which have 50% and less, and these are the foods which we want to eat because they don't raise our sugar by much. So we have different types of foods we eat in our homes. Some of these are dairy products, some of these are legumes, some of these are fruits, some of these are fiber, some of these are foods from the bakeries, from factories. So which foods are the best? One, the first thing we need to know is that we need to eat foods which are locally made at home. We need to avoid processed foods. Why? Because most processed foods have been processed, and the content called fiber has been removed from them. And once fiber is removed, the glycemic index goes up because fiber holds sugar and prevents the food you have eaten from raising your blood sugar. So we should avoid foods that have been made in factories, foods that have gone through a lot of processing. So let's go to the locally made foods. Legumes, one. Legumes including beans, groundnuts, lentils, soya, all these, and peas, cowpeas, chicken peas. So foods we call legumes are good for That's because they have a low glycemic index. They will not raise your blood sugar by much. Their glycemic index, most of them will be 37, 40, 29, 19. We even have some which are 15 and some even which are 10. So these are the legumes. So any food you have which is from the leguminous family, like beans, peas, soya, these are good foods both for the diabetic patient and also for the patient or for the person who wants to prevent diabetes. These are good foods to take in. Number 2, we shall look at the vegetables. Vegetables are very good. Why? Because they are rich in fiber. Vegetables, for example, carrots, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, leafy vegetables, all these are good, and some of them even have 0 glycemic index. For example, broccoli has 0. Cabbages have 0. It means they don't even raise your blood sugar at all, but they are good foods which you can eat and you have satisfaction. So these foods, they have a very low glycemic index and they are good for both preventing progression to diabetes and also good for diabetic patients who want to keep their sugar controlled. Then we have fruits. So some fruits have really a good glycemic index, while some fruits have a high glycemic index. What are some of the good fruits? We talked about the apple. The apple is a fruit which has a low glycemic index, and this is good for diabetic patients and also for people who want to prevent diabetes. We have fruits called apricots. Apricots are good. They have low glycemic index. Then we have a plantain or the banana. The banana also has moderate glycemic index, and this is good for people with diabetes or people who want to prevent diabetes. Then we have some fruits which are rich in fiber. For example, a mango. If you look at a mango which is ripe, a mango has fiber. This fiber helps it to hold the blood sugar, and it is a good fruit once it is eaten raw. But when you squeeze the juice out of it, the juice has a higher glycemic index. So for all these fruits, we advise that when you are going to eat them as fruits. Don't squeeze the juice out of them, and this is how you benefit from them. Then some other foods which really have a low glycemic index are unprocessed grains, whole meal, what we call whole meal grains. For example, we have things like brown rice, we have things like whole grain, for example, maize grain which is whole. What does being whole mean? Being whole means it still has its outer coating. For example, if it is maize meal, if you grind it from the machine and you get it the first time you grind it before you separate off the outer coating, then that's what we call whole meal grain. And this is very good because it also has a low glycemic index because it still has its fiber in it. So the fiber will reduce its glycemic index. Then we have some dairy products which are also good. For example, yogurt. Yogurt has low glycemic index. So for some people who like dairy products, we have yogurt. Milk is also good. It has a low glycemic index. These are foods which are good for both the diabetic patient and also other people who want to eat healthy and prevent diabetes. So thank you very much. I hope this was helpful. In this video, we have looked at some of the foods which can be good to prevent diabetes by preventing high glucose excursions, and also foods which are good for diabetic people. And we have seen that legumes are good. We have seen that whole meal grains are good. We have seen that some dairy products like milk and yogurt are also good. And then some fruits like apples and apricots, and then leafy vegetables, which we have seen that they even have actually 0 glycemic index like cabbages and broccoli. Thank you very much. I remain your physician, Dr. Andrew, and I hope you have learned from this.